There's a moment in almost every life when the noise finally stops and a single quiet sentence rises up from somewhere underneath all the striving. God, save me. Not a polished prayer, not a sentence rehearsed in a church pew, just 3 words, torn loose from a heart that has run out of other options. If you're here tonight, if those words have been sitting in your chest for days or weeks or years, you are not broken for saying them. You're not weak for needing them. You're simply human. And you're about to remember something you may have forgotten. God was never waiting for you to have it together before he would listen. He was listening the whole time. Let's breathe here for a moment, in and out. Let your shoulders drop from wherever they've been living up near your ears. Let your hands rest, open in your lap. You don't have to hold anything right now. Not the job, not the marriage, not the diagnosis, not the bank account, not the child who won't call you back. Just let it rest on the floor beside you for the next 40 minutes. It will still be there later. But right now, this is a room built only for rescue. Think about what it actually means to call out and ask to be saved. It means you have looked honestly at your own strength and found the bottom of it. It means the performance is over. It means you're done pretending the ledge isn't a ledge. There's more courage in that whispered cry than in 1,000 days of gritted teeth composure, because composure can be a mask. But God, save me. That's the truth finally leaving the building. And here is the tender part, the part so many people never get told plainly enough. The moment you stop pretending is the moment help becomes possible, not because your admission earns anything, not because your tears are a transaction, but because rescue requires a rescuer, and a rescuer needs somewhere to stand. Your honesty, your surrender. That is the ground he stands on. So tonight, we are not going to talk about performing your way back into favour. We're not going to talk about fixing yourself before you're allowed to ask. We are going to talk about being found exactly where you are. Picture for a moment someone caught in deep water. Maybe they went in willingly, thinking they could handle the current. Maybe they were pushed. Maybe they simply drifted out an inch a day until one afternoon they looked up and the shore was gone. It doesn't matter how they got there. What matters is the moment they stop swimming towards some imagined competence and instead lift a hand into the air and cry out. That cry isn't a failure. That cry is the whole plan working exactly as it should. You were never asked to swim the ocean alone. You were asked to lift your hand. So lift it now, however that looks for you, a whispered word, a held breath, a single tear you've been holding back in front of everyone who needed you to be strong. Let that be your hand in the air tonight. God save me. Say it again if you need to. There is no limit on how many times a drowning heart is allowed to ask for air. I want you to notice something about the story of every person who has ever cried out and been met. Not one of them had it figured out first. Not one of them arrived clean, composed, deserving. The widow at the well didn't clean up her life before she was seen. The frightened disciple sinking beneath the waves didn't demonstrate more faith before a hand reached down and caught him. Rescue doesn't wait at the finish line of self-improvement. Rescue meets you exactly where the water is over your head. This is the part of the story that gets skipped when people talk about faith like it's a reward for good behaviour. It isn't. It never was. Grace doesn't grade on effort. It simply shows up. And the showing up that is the whole miracle. Let's slow down again. In and out. If your mind wandered off to make a list of everything wrong with your week, gently bring it back. There will be time for lists later. Right now, there is only this breath, this room, and the quiet certainty that you are not as alone in this moment as you have felt. I want to talk honestly about what it feels like to carry more than a person was built to carry. Maybe it's grief that never got its own quiet room, so it moved into every other room in your life instead. Maybe it's fear that shows up disguised as control, checking locks twice, running numbers at 3 a.m, rehearsing conversations that haven't happened yet. Maybe it's shame, an old shame, the kind that convinced you a long time ago that you had to earn your place at every table, including the table of your own family, your own friendships, your own peace. Whatever it is for you, here is the truth, underneath the truth. You were never meant to carry it alone. Not because you're incapable, You've proven again and again how capable you are. But because carrying alone was never the design, somewhere along the way, most of us learned that needing help was a kind of failure. We learned to smile through the ache. We learned to say, I'm fine, so many times that we half believed it ourselves. But fine is not the same as free. Tonight, I want to invite you into something different than fine. I want to invite you into found. There's a difference between managing your life and being met in it. Managing looks like competence from the outside. It looks like showing up, doing the tasks, keeping the calendar, answering the messages. And you can manage for years, decades even, while something underneath quietly starves. Being met is different. Being met means someone, something larger than your own effort, steps into the middle of your managing and says, I see what this is costing you. Let me carry some of this. That is what it means to call on God to save you, not to hand him a to-do list of miracles you'd like performed on your timeline, but to hand him the weight itself, the ongoing, exhausting weight of carrying alone, and to let your hands finally be empty enough to receive something back. Let's breathe together again. In for 4 counts, hold for 4 and out for 6, long and slow, like you're letting go of something you've been gripping without noticing. In, hold, and out. Good. Let's stay here a while. I want to tell you something that took me a long time to understand, and maybe it will save you some of that time. The waiting you're in right now, the not yet answered prayer, the not yet healed relationship, the not yet clear path forward, that waiting is not evidence of absence. It feels like absence. It feels some mornings like shouting into an empty room. But waiting and abandonment are not the same word, even though grief tries to convince us they are. Think of a season, any season you've lived through before, where things looked stuck on the surface while underneath everything was quietly shifting. A seed doesn't announce its growth. It works in the dark, in the cold ground, completely unseen, for far longer than anyone standing above the soil would have patience for. And then one ordinary morning, there it is, breaking through as if it happened overnight. It didn't happen overnight. It happened the whole time you couldn't see it. Your rescue may be working the same way. I know that's not the answer some of us want tonight. Some of us wanted proof right now, tangible and immediate, that the crying out did something, and I won't pretend that immediate proof always comes. Sometimes it does. A phone call arrives at exactly the moment you needed it. A door opens the very week you thought every door was closed. A stranger says the one sentence you'd been aching to hear. And sometimes the answer is slower, quieter, more like the seed than the sudden downpour. But here is what I want you to hold on to either way. The call for help was heard the instant it left your lips, not after you proved your faith was strong enough, not after some cosmic delay for processing, the instant. Whatever unfolds after that moment is not a test of whether you were heard. It's simply the unfolding. Let's breathe again. In and out. Let your jaw unclench. Let your forehead soften. You have been bracing for so long, haven't you? Bracing for the next bad news, the next disappointment, the next proof that you really are as alone as it sometimes feels. You can set the bracing down for these next few minutes. Nothing here requires your armour. I want to talk about what it means to be truly seen, because I think many of us have quietly stopped believing it's possible. We've been misunderstood by people who mattered. We've explained ourselves and watched the explanation land wrong. We've been the strong one for so long that even the people closest to us forgot to ask how we were actually doing. And somewhere in all that, a belief took root that maybe we're just meant to go through this unseen. Maybe that's simply the shape of an adult life. I don't believe that, and I don't think deep down you do either. I think that belief is a wound talking, not a truth. Being fully known and still being wanted, that is one of the rarest gifts a person can receive. Most human love comes with conditions we don't even realise we've accepted until we test them and find the edges. But there is a kind of seeing that has no edges, a kind of knowing that includes every version of you, the version who succeeded and the version who failed, the version who forgave and the version who couldn't yet, the version who prayed with confidence and the version who could barely whisper the words. and loves all of them the same. That is the love this moment is built around. Not a love that requires you to finish becoming someone else first. A love that meets the you who is here right now, mid-sentence, mid-struggle, mid-doubt, and says, this is enough. You are enough to be reached. Let's take another breath together, in and out. Notice, if you can, that your body has softened just slightly since we began. That's not nothing. That's the beginning of trust, showing up in your shoulders before it ever shows up in your circumstances. I want to speak now to the specific ache some of you are carrying tonight, because I suspect it isn't one general feeling. It's a particular Tuesday, a particular diagnosis, a particular name you can't say out loud yet without your voice breaking, a particular decision you don't know how to make, a particular loneliness that doesn't go away no matter how many people are in the room. To you specifically tonight, your particular ache is not too small to matter, and it is not too large to be met. There is no category of struggle so ordinary that it isn't worth crying out over, and no category so overwhelming that it's beyond reach. The same reaching hand that steadies a person through the loss of everything is the same hand that steadies a person through a hard Tuesday that no one else even notices. Both are real. Both are worthy of being brought here. So bring it, whatever it is. You don't need the right words. You don't need to organise it into a tidy request. You can bring it messy. You can bring it through tears, or through silence, or through the exhausted flatness that comes after you've cried so much there's nothing left to cry with. All of that is still a prayer. All of that still counts as lifting your hand. Let's breathe together once more. In and slowly out. Let your whole body sink a little further into wherever you're resting. You are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to stop proving something for the length of this recording. I want to walk with you through what it might feel like to actually be rescued, not in a dramatic, cinematic way, though sometimes it is dramatic, but in the quieter, more common way that most rescue actually happens. It often begins with a strange, unearned calm, not because the circumstances have changed yet. The bills are still due. The diagnosis is still real. The relationship is still fractured, but something shifts on the inside before it shifts on the outside. A weight that was pressing on your chest for months eases, even slightly, even for an afternoon. You notice you can breathe a little deeper. You notice a stray thought of gratitude slipping in where dread used to live. That's not you talking yourself into optimism. That's the beginning of being met. Then often comes clarity, not answers to every question, but enough light for the next step. You don't need to see the whole staircase, you need to see the next stair. And when you cry out, honestly, that next stair has a way of appearing, a conversation you didn't expect to have, a memory that resurfaces with new meaning, a sentence someone says that seems aimed directly at the exact question you were carrying. And then, in its own time, comes strength. Not the white-knuckled strength of gritting your teeth through another day, a different kind. The kind that lets you set something down because you finally trust it's being held by someone else. The kind that lets you rest without feeling like the whole structure will collapse the moment you stop holding it up. This is what being saved actually looks like most days. It isn't usually a lightning bolt. It's a slow return of breath to a body that forgot it was allowed to breathe deeply. Let's pause here and breathe deeply together on purpose. In through the nose, hold for a moment at the top, and out through the mouth, long and unhurried. Again, in, hold, and out. I want to say something to the part of you that feels guilty for needing rescue in the first place. Maybe you've spent your whole life being the one who rescues others, the one people call at midnight, the one who shows up with the casserole, the ride to the appointment, the steady voice on the phone at 2 a.m, and now here you are, needing that same steadiness, and some old, tired part of you feels like you're not allowed. Like needing help is a betrayal of the role you've played for everyone else. Hear this clearly. You were never meant to be the only source. Not for them, and not for yourself. The same strength that let you show up for others so faithfully is available to hold you too. You do not have to earn the right to be carried by proving you can carry everyone else first. That's not how this works. That was never how this was supposed to work. Let it go, even just for tonight. Let yourself be the one who's held. I want to talk too to the part of you that has cried out before and felt like nothing happened. Maybe you prayed hard once in a hospital hallway or a parked car or an empty apartment, and the outcome wasn't what you were hoping for. Maybe you've been quietly angry about that ever since, even if you haven't said it out loud. I want you to know that anger is not a disqualifying feeling. It doesn't put you outside the reach of being met. Some of the most honest conversations happen exactly there, in the space where disappointment and faith are both telling the truth at the same time. You are allowed to say, I asked before and it hurt when the answer wasn't what I wanted. You are allowed to bring that here too. Rescue doesn't require you to pretend the past didn't happen. It only requires that you keep showing up with your hand still lifted, even when lifting it has cost you something before. Let's breathe again, in and out. You're doing something brave right now, even lying still, even in silence. You're choosing to stay open in a world that has given you plenty of reasons to close. Let's talk about what it might mean to actually live differently on the other side of this rescue. Not perfectly, not without struggle ever again, but differently. It might mean you stop performing peace and start actually practicing it. Small moments daily where you choose to set the weight down instead of gripping it out of habit. It might mean you let someone else see the parts of you that are still healing instead of managing everyone's image of you like a full-time job. It might mean you finally rest on the day meant for resting instead of treating rest as something you have to earn through exhaustion first. It might mean you start speaking to yourself the way you'd speak to someone you love who was struggling with patience instead of the sharp, impatient voice so many of us have learned to use on ourselves and only ourselves. None of this happens instantly. Rescue is not a single event that erases every future hard day. It's closer to a relationship, an ongoing return to the same open hand, the same honest cry, the same quiet trust, again and again for the rest of your life. Some days that return will be easy. Some days it will feel like starting over completely. Both are part of the same faithful practice. Let's breathe together one more time. In and out. Let your whole body feel heavier now, sinking into rest, into trust, into the truth that you are being held even in this stillness. I want to leave you with something to carry forward, something small enough to remember on a hard morning 3 weeks from now, when this recording is long finished and life has gotten loud again. When the noise returns, and it will, because that's what noise does. You don't have to solve everything before you're allowed to ask for help again. You don't have to rebuild your composure first. You only have to lift your hand. 3 words are enough. God, save me. Whisper them in a parking lot. Whisper them in the shower where no one can hear you break. Whisper them in the 2 minutes before you have to walk back into a room and pretend everything is fine. You will be heard every single time. Not because you finally said it right, but because being heard was never about getting it right in the first place. Let's take a final slow breath together. In deeply and out, releasing everything you don't need to hold through the night. You're not alone in the water. You never were. The hand that reaches for you doesn't ask what took you so long, doesn't ask how you ended up so far from shore, doesn't require an explanation before it pulls you close. It simply reaches, and it will keep reaching tonight, tomorrow, and every day after, for as long as you need it to. Before we close, let's stay a little longer in this quiet, because there's more worth saying, and no reason to rush toward the end of a rescue that's only just beginning. I want to talk about the difference between being saved once and being saved daily, because I think a lot of us were taught to think of rescue as a single transaction. A moment happens, a decision is made, and after that, the story is supposed to be finished. But that's not how most lives actually work, and it was never really the promise in the first place. The promise was never that hard things would stop coming. The promise was that you wouldn't face them without a hand nearby. So if you find yourself needing to whisper the same 3 words tomorrow that you whispered tonight, that is not evidence that tonight failed. That is simply what an honest, ongoing relationship looks like. You don't stop telling someone you love them after the first time you say it. You say it again and again in 100 small moments, because love isn't a box you check once. Rescue is the same. It's not a box. It's a return over and over to the same open hand. Let's breathe together again. In and out. Notice how much less effort that breath took than the one at the very beginning. Something in you has already started to soften. I want to speak now about fear specifically, because fear has a particular way of convincing us that we are more alone than we actually are. Fear whispers in the middle of the night that no one is really coming. It rehearses worst case scenarios like they're already true. It keeps a person's body braced for danger long after the actual danger has passed or before it has even arrived. If fear has had a loud voice in your life lately, I want you to notice something. Fear can be present in the room and still not be in charge of it. You don't have to wait for fear to fully leave before you're allowed to feel steady. You can feel afraid and held at the same time. Those two things are not opposites. Some of the most steady, faithful people who have ever lived were also, in the very same breath, honestly afraid. Courage was never the absence of fear. It was the decision to keep reaching for the hand anyway, fear and all. So, if your hands are shaking as you lift them tonight, that's all right. Shaking hands still get held. Let's breathe again. In and out. Let your chest rise gently without forcing it, and let it fall the same way. There's no performance required in this breathing either, just presence. I want to talk about shame for a moment, because shame is often the quiet undercurrent beneath a cry for help that never gets said out loud. Shame convinces us that our particular struggle is uniquely disqualifying, that other people's pain is understandable, but ours is somehow different, somehow deserved, somehow proof of something broken at the core. Shame is a liar with a very convincing voice, because it often speaks in our own voice, using our own memories as evidence. Here is the truth. Shame doesn't want you to hear. Nothing you have done and nothing that has been done to you places you outside the reach of being saved. Not the mistake you've never told anyone about, not the anger you've carried towards someone you were supposed to forgive by now, not the years you spent numbing an ache instead of naming it, not the faith that wavered or disappeared entirely for a season you're embarrassed to admit. All of it, every part of it, is still within reach of the same hand that is reaching for you tonight. You do not have to resolve your shame before you're allowed to ask for rescue. In fact, it usually works the other way. The rescue is often what finally makes it safe enough to look at the shame honestly for the first time. Let's breathe together once more, in and out. You're safe here, in this quiet, exactly as you are. I want to offer you a few words you can return to, almost like a small anchor, whenever the noise of ordinary life starts pulling you back under. You don't need to memorize a long passage. You only need these few. I am not alone. I'm not alone. I'm not alone. Say that quietly to yourself, even now, even in your mind if your voice is tired. I am not alone. Whatever tomorrow holds, whatever conversation you're dreading, whatever silence in your house feels heavier than it should, that sentence is still true. I am not alone. And alongside it, a second anchor. I am allowed to ask. You're allowed to ask for help without earning it first. You are allowed to ask again, even if the first answer wasn't what you hoped for. You're allowed to ask in the middle of the night, in a whisper, in tears, in silence, in a single held breath. I am allowed to ask. Let's breathe one more time together, slower now as we come toward the close. In, hold gently, and out, long and unhurried. Feel your body sinking further into rest with each exhale. I want to leave you with a small picture to carry into sleep tonight. Picture the moment just after rescue, not the dramatic instant of being pulled from the water, but the quiet after. Wrapped in something warm, breathing steady again, not yet strong enough to stand and not needing to be. Just resting safely in the space right after being found. That is where I want you to imagine yourself tonight, not standing tall and fixed and finished, just resting, safe, found, warm, breathing. You do not have to fix everything to get here. You only had to lift your hand and say the truest sentence you had left. God, save me. And that was enough. It is always enough. Let your body rest now fully into whatever is holding you. The bed, the chair, the quiet of this room. Let your mind rest from the lists and the worries and the rehearsed conversations. There will be time for all of that again tomorrow. Tonight belongs to rest. You are not alone in the water. You never were. The hand that reaches for you doesn't ask what took you so long, doesn't ask how you ended up so far from shore, doesn't require an explanation before it pulls you close. It simply reaches, and it will keep reaching tonight, tomorrow, and every day after, for as long as you need it to. Rest now. You're being held. You're being carried. You are, even now, being saved. Good night.